believe me, no one's corrupt, dumb, or incompetent. Okay, that's not the case here. I'm trying my best to represent and to do my due diligence, and I think all of us have answered exhaustively, and I say that literally. You know, and again, if there's more dialogue to be had, we should do so. We could do it offline to save time, perhaps, but that's not what's important. What's important is that we get the discussion going. And if anyone thinks we haven't had a discussion about this topic, we've been asleep for the last X number of years. So, by and large, this is productive. This is good. For the record, we are taxed heavily, but out of the 22 towns in Essex County, we are our average tax rate, our average tax bill is the 9th highest, meaning there are 8 communities in Essex County that have a higher tax rate.
When we moved in here, we knew that West Orange had exceptionally high property taxes, but we also knew that this was a wonderful town and a wonderful community with wonderful people. And it's not an overstatement to say that my family and I are growing to love this town, and we otherwise had no prior connections to this town or this state. Nevertheless, when I started hearing about the Edison project and what the financial ramifications were, I was absolutely shocked. And I want to point out 2 facts that the council may or may not be aware of. The non-for-profit, nonpartisan Tax Policy Foundation in Washington exists solely to study tax policy and tax rates. In 2009, the most recent year that they conducted a study, Essex County was ranked number 2 out of 730 large counties across America in terms of its tax rate, the 2nd highest property tax rate of any major county in the entire United States of America. West Orange, in 2012, has the single highest property tax rate of any town in Essex County. The one thing that is absolutely certain, I can provide the documentation, that's not subjective, and I will be glad to email it to the council. The one thing that is absolutely certain in this project is no matter what happens, no matter when, and no matter how, it will inevitably require an increase in current property taxes. We will be at or near the single highest property tax town in the entire country of nearly 350 million people.
But we're doing better. We're trying, and I think we're on a better course and not kicking the can down the road, as the case may be. I'm not going to answer everybody. I'm going to be very brief. Just a couple key points to raise here. No one has a crystal ball, right? So we're working off projections as best and as diligently as we can. While the plan has changed and evolved because it's now a rental plan and not a for sale plan, it's important to keep in mind these numbers haven't been discussed, that there are 35 studio apartments, 185 one-bedroom apartments. So out of a total of 336 units, 210 of them are studio or one-bedroom. That probably accounts for what many folks feel is a surprisingly low number of school-age children, because 210 out of 333 units are studio and one-bedroom apartments. I think that's roughly 2/3, not all that sharp mathematically. Roughly 2/3 are studio and one-bedroom apartments. So if you factor that in, and in the order of 600, 700, 800 square feet, so not really large units. So unlike my home or maybe your home where there's 3, 4 bedrooms in the yard, you're not likely to get families with children. That's, again, no one has a crystal ball, but that's part of the analysis, I think, and why the conclusion might be shocking to some. Having said that, I think the town's data shows up to 62 units. I mean, if we use our existing garden apartments in the community where 1 in 4 residents are school-age kids, you might get a larger number. I think the number was almost as high as 62 students. But the fact is, and the data's out there, so I'm not saying anything that's new, but we have to keep in mind the unit mix. It's important to figure out the tax abatement value. I understand that. However, it's very difficult to do so because, for one, we don't know what taxes are going to be in 2017, 2023, 2029. You don't know what they are. So if you don't know what they are, how do you value them now to determine the difference between that and the proposed pilot? You don't know, right? So I think that's a very difficult thing to do. It's impossible. Again, just projections. keep in mind, as has been mentioned, that we made a finding that but for the tax abatement, and when I say abatement, they're still paying property taxes on the land, they're still paying a payment in lieu of taxes. That payment in lieu of taxes is going to result in revenue to the town that is more revenue than we get now. It's enough revenue when you factor in the contractually obligated minimum of $650,000 to pay back the debt service. So in response to Mr. Dreyer's question earlier about how do we guarantee it, we went through this when we had our meeting a couple weeks ago. Half the debt service is being paid back as a special assessment on the units. So it's a special assessment on the units, means the obligation to pay that back runs with the units, or whoever owns them. So at the end of the day, that's not going to hit your tax bill or my tax bill. The other half of the obligation to pay back that general obligation debt is going to come out of the revenue of the project, again, so that it doesn't hit your tax bill or my tax bill. So the question obviously becomes, what if there's not enough revenue? Granted. So that's why there's a minimum obligation put in there, $650,000. So at the worst case scenario, that's what they'll have to pay, or what the owners of the property, whoever it might be, will have to pay. Again, that's enough money to cover our debt service so that the debt associated with this project does not hit your tax bill or my tax bill. So hopefully that answers your question in terms of where there are dedicated sources coming in of revenue that won't affect your taxes or mine. We've discussed that before as well. I think that was the most important thing that I wanted to cover again for, I talked about the unit mix, talked about the tax abatement issue. Let's keep in mind the tax abatement issue. We have a company, an entity willing to spend in excess of $100 million on a property that probably won't be assessed higher than the amount of money they put into it. That is essentially, at its core, why this is a redevelopment project and not a development project, right? In other words, if you're not going to get your value out of the project, you're going to put more into it than it would actually be worth because of the challenges on the property, in this case because of the environmental issues that had to be spent to be remediated, and other issues, other challenges, just with having to restructure that building is a huge challenge, right? And having to do so in a historically and historical preservation compliant fashion, which has to be done no matter who does that building, they're going to put more money into the building than it probably will be worth. That's not how anyone does business, right? So in order to succeed and get that done, the state allows for redevelopment. Redevelopment is what? Redevelopment allows the government to provide a tax abatement over the course of 30 years to put value into the property that's not there in the marketplace. And it's just not there. If it was there, we wouldn't be talking about this building for 12 years, right? So that's where the value of the tax abatement comes in. And again, but for that abatement, we would not have the net positive revenue we expect to get out of this property. That's it. And we've talked already at length about how we've agreed, and I don't think you see this necessarily in a lot of areas where there's redevelopment, we've agreed that the Board of Education, which is really our big cost here, the cost to educate any children that come out of that building, we're going to pay for that. We're going to give the Board of Education money. You look at other communities that do redevelopment, that doesn't happen. The town keeps that money, right? We're taxpayers and we get it. Right pocket, left pocket. We're going to take care of that cost to the largest extent we can under this revenue stream that's going to come in, whether it's at least $650,000 or as high as, $900 and something thousand. I think that's it. I don't need to. The only other comment I wanted to make, it's very hard to sit here while you're being, called all sorts of things, including not diligent or what have you. It's tough to do. It's why we do it. It's not Tuesday Night Live, for those of you who call it that, because of us, by the way. I think we've been very nothing but civil and professional. So it's not Tuesday Night Live because of us. Having said that, our redevelopment staff, our consultants who have worked for a number of years at no cost to the taxpayer, because through an escrow account, the redeveloper is paying for that cost. So again, this process is not, their time being wasted here is not on our dime. Sorry, Gene. Having said that, they're top-notch staff. Really, our two firms, our financial firm and our law firm, you look it up online, and some residents have they're among the best in the state at what they do. So we're not being duped here. We're not being fooled. We might not understand everything. They work with us. Believe me, folks, and for the folks at home and for the folks who are here for the first time, this is not a mockery. We don't treat this like a mockery, even though it comes off sometimes like that on TV 36. And that's really the important thing. I mean, you know, you might not like the decisions. That's fine. You might disagree with our conclusions or our opinions. That's fine. But by no means is this process anything but civil, polite, and deserving of the township's reputation that gentlemen who want to do business in the town have noticed before, and if they stay awake long enough, they'll have reason to see, you know, does the service to our taxpayers like they should have service. So thank you all for your comments. That's enough. I'm done.
Okay.
Business.
I'm really not going to reiterate. I